I am hard of hearing, and I say that first because it matters. The winter afternoon felt cold and steady, with thin light and clean snow. I live near a small forest at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. Most people know each other here, which makes the streets feel softer. The forest has simple trails that I know well from weekly walks. My dog Monty loves snow more than anything, and he pulls hard near trees. He's a Rottweiler Husky mix with big paws and an eager nose. We turned the corner toward the forest entrance, and his energy went ballistic. Fresh snow covered the paths like a blank canvas waiting for prints. Yellow patches and old boot marks showed other dogs had already been out. By February, the sun slides down fast, and afternoons fade quicker than I expect. I'll let Monty off his leash because he behaves better when he runs. He sprinted ahead in wide arcs, kicking powder up like small clouds. I thought about birds because I had new binoculars from Christmas. The trail split at a fork I know, and I studied the snow. One branch showed traffic, pack prints, and rough edges that looked churned. The other branch looked untouched, clean, and inviting in a quiet way. I felt a small pull to be a little adventurous, honestly just curious. I took the clean path and kept a steady pace along the bend. The trail opened into a clearing with a bluish cast on the snow. The tree stood like a dark wall, straight and fixed and quiet. I lifted the binoculars and scanned from left to right slowly. A shape caught my eye along the trees, blue against brown and black. It was a tarp stretched over poles, sagging slightly like a makeshift shelter. I felt a question rise, the kind that nags but stays gentle. It was getting late and colder, so I turned around without investigating. Monty trotted back toward me, but his posture looked tense and careful. He sniffed the ground hard, moving methodically with a focused nose. I studied the snow and found a set of prints near my feet. They were larger than mine, with deeper bites and longer strides. I turned my boot sideways and compared the tread, which didn't match. There were no other forks past this point, which confused me sharply. Whoever walked this path must have passed while I used the binoculars. I try not to spiral into thoughts, but my stomach tightened anyway. The light went gray, and the air felt stiff against my cheeks. We moved toward home, keeping to the center of the trail. Monty stopped suddenly and barked hard, aiming behind me with full force. I turned around and saw a man standing about a meter away. He was tall, maybe 6'4", and absolutely still. He wore charcoal snow pants and a white camo jacket that blended badly. His hands stayed in his coat pockets, and his mouth moved slightly. He seemed to mutter something, but I could not read his lips. The lighting was poor, and I did not know the language either. I raised both hands and tried to communicate in simple terms. I said I am hard of hearing and it is late and cold. I said I needed to go home and would leave right now. He stared quietly, then turned and walked toward the tree without hurry. I stood frozen for 2 long breaths and then exhaled hard. I felt stupid for leaving my phone at home like a rookie. We reached my street, and I entered the house around 4:30 p.m. Darkness held the windows, and the rooms felt thin and hollow. I fed Monty and drank tea, trying to settle my pulse down. I slept early and woke again at exactly 3, and Monty licked my hand, which is his way of waking me gently. My phone screen showed a text from my neighbor asking if we were okay. He said Monty had been barking like he was possessed for 5 minutes. I went downstairs and saw Monty barking at the patio door intensely. My vision was blurry, and the backyard was black like a wasted page. The motion sensor light clicked on and spilled bright white across the yard. My heart dropped through the floor because the man stood by the gate. He faced the glass, motionless, with the same jacket and posture. I stepped away from the door and texted 911 with shaking hands. I know texting emergency services is allowed here, so I used words. I ran upstairs, grabbed my machete, and locked the bedroom door tightly. I sat on the floor with Monty pressed against my legs for comfort. The hall night light painted a thin band under the door seam. A shadow moved across that band, slow and deliberate, then stopped. I waited for the handle to turn, but it never moved at all. Those minutes felt longer than anything, stretching with fear and dread. I thought about my hearing, my choices, and the fork I took. I thought about the leash, the phone, and my habit of quiet walks. Police sirens finally cut the silence, getting closer and sharper. Officers shouted and entered, then cleared the rooms methodically and fast. The patio glass was smashed and spidered, with cold air pouring in. The backyard gate stood open, pointing a straight line to the forest. Boot prints led out, then disappeared into gray snow near the path. I told them about the tarp shelter that I had seen earlier. They searched the clearing and found signs of bedding and trash. Nothing in my home was missing, but the feeling was broken. I stayed with a friend for 2 nights while repairs were done. I changed my habits, and I now keep to roads and lit paths. I take my phone, I set timers, and I use brighter yard lights. I watch the gate and listen for small sounds that usually hide. I try not to blame myself, but I do learn from fear. I prefer boring safety now, and I keep my steps small. It was a Saturday in December, and the air felt dry and cold. I was 16, and my sister Kate was 15, living with our parents. We wanted to see a horror movie with winter scenes and Christmas bits. The rating said 18 plus, but we looked older and risked it anyway. We got into the theater without trouble and found seats near the aisle. Halfway through the film, my phone buzzed loudly like a mistake. People turned toward me with annoyed faces, and I felt real embarrassment. We left the theater fast, and I checked the screen for calls. My dad had called, then a text appeared asking for lunch delivered. He said the small cafe in the woods was shut for the day. He worked near a hill and a lake with a deck and rocks. It sounded normal, and neither of us second-guessed the message. We drove home, packed a simple lunch, and headed for the woods. The sun was sliding down because winter days end faster than you think. The lot near the gate was empty, and the wind felt sharp. We walked down the small hill toward the water through bare trees. I called my dad twice, but he did not answer either time. I sent a text and waited for the dots to appear slowly. He replied that we should walk down and wait on the lake deck. We followed instructions because they seemed like typical work requests. A man in black sat at the end of the deck facing water. His hood was up, and his posture looked rigid but somehow patient. I called out for my dad, but the man did not respond at all. We stepped closer and stopped a few feet behind him, uneasy. I reached for his hood and pulled it back gently but firmly. It was not my dad, and the man smiled in a thin way. He held my dad's phone and waved it like he was proud. Kate grabbed my sleeve, and I felt panic build in my chest. I asked why he had the phone, but he did not answer me. He lunged and grabbed Kate's arm, and she screamed at full volume. I pulled her away hard, and we ran for the small hill immediately. Heavy footsteps thudded behind us, getting closer with each stride. I did not turn around because fear ruined good decisions quickly. We reached the car, slammed doors, and locked them with shaking hands. The man reached my window and crouched down out of sight briefly. I reversed hard, turned, and sped toward the road with shaking legs. We got home breathless, and our parents stared at us wide-eyed. My dad said his phone had been stolen at work earlier today. He had already returned home because the device had gone missing quickly. He called the police, who tracked the phone using its number. Officers found it on the deck and returned it without further action. They said not much else could be done after recovery, unfortunately. We thought it was over, but it was not even close, honestly. At 1 a.m., I received a text from an unknown number suddenly. It said our house looked nice lit only by our bedroom TV. I paused the TV instantly, and the room went dark and wrong. I heard faint rustling under my window, like clothing on wood siding. My room sits on the second floor, facing trees and the street. I peeked through the blinds and saw the man smiling at me. He pointed a gun at the window, and my whole body went cold. I backed away, and the glass shattered with a sharp sound. My parents ran in, and we locked the door while Kate dialed. We heard a second crash in the kitchen, louder and closer. Police arrived fast and searched the house and yard systematically. They found no one, but checked our cars like careful professionals. They found a small air tag taped near my tire inside the wheel well. That explained the crouch at the car and how he tracked us. We handed over the unknown number and asked for regular patrols. The officers said they would watch the street and nearby cut-throughs. Weeks passed with snow and silence, but the fear remained stubborn. I kept curtains closed, lights on, and location settings disabled on phones. I still feel stupid for trusting that message without a phone call. I am trying to be better, and I ask twice when things feel off. We do not walk to secluded places at dusk anymore, honestly. I want boring safety more than lake views because fear sticks. It was 2021, and work felt hectic, messy, and never-ending at home. I finished a long video meeting and planned to drive upstate afterward. My family had already arrived, and I was running hours behind schedule. The storm had strengthened, with heavy snow and wind pushing sideways across roads. The streets were poorly plowed, and the drifts grew along curbs and trees. My car was an old Hyundai without anti-lock brakes, which was terrible. I made 2 cups of coffee because the drive would be draining and slow. I stepped outside and felt the wind bite through my coat immediately. I drove under the speed limit through neighborhood streets with deep ruts. Once I reached the highway, I sped up even though it was dumb. I arrived around 9, apologizing while dinner moved along without me. We shared gifts, drank a bit, and laughed about old stories. Time slipped fast, and I forgot about the weather building outside. I left past midnight, with another foot of snow on the ground. The road felt dead and empty, with trees pressing close in darkness. I raised my speed to 40, which was a mistake I regret. As I approached a bend, my car slid sideways without any grip. I steered into the skid and tapped the brake without success. The car drifted off the road and struck a snowbank beside a tree. The airbag deployed, and I sat stunned and shaking for seconds. I was lucky and alive, but the hood was buried in packed snow. I called roadside assistance, who said it could take 40 minutes. I called my dad, and he promised to drive over to wait. I locked the doors and kept the heater running low to save battery. The wind howled outside and pushed snow across the windows like sand. Then I heard footsteps in the snow, slow and uneven in rhythm. I opened the driver door crack and looked over the roof carefully. I saw no one on the road, and the tree lean felt wrong. I shut the door, locked it, and listened for the next sound. A tap hit the passenger window, then another on the rear window. The glass was crusted with ice and snow, so I could not see. I stepped out, and the air felt colder than my breath expected. Boot prints circled my car and led into the woods silently. Drops of blood marked the snow near the passenger side of the car. My stomach tightened, and I grabbed my small flashlight and gloves. I followed prints toward the tree lean, where shadows collected like waiting. The drops became longer lines as if someone was bleeding fast. I saw a dark mass in the snow just beyond the trees. I lifted the light and found a deer with its stomach ripped open. I lowered the beam and swallowed hard, not wanting to know more. I turned back toward my car, feeling watched from the dark line. I opened the driver door and froze as fear crashed through me. A severed deer head sat on the seat, facing forward like a passenger. I almost vomited and stepped back, dropping the flashlight into snow. I ran down the road toward distant headlights, waving my arms wildly. My dad stopped and yelled for me to get in immediately, which I did. I told him everything fast, and he didn't believe me at first. We drove back to my car and studied the scene carefully. Boot prints still circled, and a wide blood stain remained on the seat. The deer head was gone, and drag marks cut long lines through snow. My dad went quiet and stopped dismissing what I described earlier. The tow truck arrived and hooked my car with professional speed. The driver seemed nervous and worked fast to avoid standing in darkness. My dad asked if I want to call the police right then. I felt exhausted and empty, and I said no and wanted sleep. He drove me home, and I showered until my skin felt warmer. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time. I thought about driving too fast and ignoring weather on the highway. I thought about opening the door and stepping into a silent forest. I hate that I left the car twice because it felt reckless. I am slower now and check tires, weather, and routes before leaving. I keep a bright flashlight, a blanket, and a first aid kit in reach. I lock doors, stay inside, and tell the truth about fear sooner. I want boring roads, quiet nights, and uneventful drives from now on.